Okay. So as you were growing up in Thomas, did you have an idea even back then of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
So, I feel like typically I used to repeat that, I want to be an engineer like my dad.
Mhm.
Be mindful at that time I didn't know what an engineer really was. So what they did, I really didn't have any clue, but I always used to say that. So when I was in Form 5, one of the biggest things, like, you're trying to figure out what career you want to get into. You're 15, 16 years old and you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to go? And engineering was still top of the list. I had pilot second. I also was interested in being a pilot. But then I just started researching, like, I'm like, what's my biggest motivation? What's the biggest factor? And it was money. I'm just being honest. Like,
Hmm.
I couldn't think of any other thing that could make me, I didn't have any experience in any other field to make me feel like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I started Googling the top paying jobs, and engineer was one of the top few. So it's funny because when I first left Grenada, I went to Ryerson University and I was doing computer engineering my first year, and I did my first programming course and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And then that's when I realized, like, yeah, computer engineer is not for me. So I actually dropped out of Ryerson,
Mm.
and as that summer I worked at a Jamaican restaurant downtown Toronto. And I was working there, and I just a few things happened while I was working there. For instance, I was helping clean up the back alley of the restaurant, and then, like, the manager accidentally swept like garbage onto my face. And I remember going into the washroom and I was like, this is not for me. Like, I need more in life. I understand people who could do these jobs, but this job did not fit my soul. I knew for a fact. So it's from there I started doing a bit more research. My dad helped me out. And then I went the college route. And the college route, in my personal opinion, was the best thing that I could have done for my career because it's more hands-on experience, it's more things related to what's actually happening in the field, and it gave me a better understanding as to what I want to be. So from that, I went from a civil technology diploma in college, and then I transferred out later on to university to get my engineering degree in
Okay.
civil engineering.
So I have a few questions here.
Yeah,
Because okay, so you mentioned that you were working at this Jamaican restaurant.
yeah.
What was the plan for you? So I'm going to assume, tell me if I'm wrong, that like college was initially the goal when you left here, when you
When
left
I left
Grenada.
Grenada, like, how every Grenadian tells you go to university.
Yeah.
You need a university degree. So when I left, I went straight to university. But
Okay.
a couple of things. I wasn't mature enough at that time.
How old
Um,
were you, just for reference?
I would have been 17 and I would have turned 18 when I started university.
Okay.
So I, like, just full transparency. I was not like an A plus student. Like, I've never been an A plus student. I never thought the school setting was for me. I just did enough to get by. That was just my main goal because I was more into sports and doing different things. And I just did more to did enough just to get by. So in PBC, I would say I don't even think I got in the top 10 in class, to be honest with you. But I did enough. I made sure I got all my subjects. I worked just so that I could get through. So when it was university time, when going into Ryerson, I had that mentality. I'm like, oh, I could just do the bare minimum and get through. And that wasn't the case. I was really awakened when they were like, when I saw the amount of coursework I got to study for my midterm the night before, I'm like, bro, this is not happening. So that was a rough period in my time because that's when I started to realize, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I'm like, I thought I wanted to get into engineering. I thought I wanted to do the computer. I didn't like programming. So after my first university year, I got a job. My brother's friend actually was a manager, and so he hired me. And this was my first job ever. I'd never worked
Okay.
before that. So while
So
I was
like
working, yep.
just to get the mindset at that point, you left school. Did you have a next plan? Like, was this job kind of your entry into adult life? Did you think
It
you were just going to make money and then go back to school? What was going on?
I did not have a plan. So I'll be honest with you, this job was for me to help pay rent.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any income, I didn't have any funds, I still had to pay rent. So this job was just, hey, okay, let's work for the summer, let's try to figure things out. Like I was looking at the Air Force, I was because I didn't feel like I had enough discipline to be able to achieve my goals at that time.
Mm.
So when I started working and then I started realizing like, as I had that job, I started working part-time at Foot Locker. And I'm just like, I need more for myself. Like this minimum wage thing, it ain't gonna work. Like I'm working all these hours and I'm barely making money. I'm like, this is not for me. But what I didn't know is that math was my strong point growing up. So in regardless of which part of schooling I was at, I know math was my strongest part. So I know it still had to be around the engineering field that I was more interested in. So my dad was just like, hey, how about you take a look at this college, which was Seneca College. And even then, when I started it, my first year, it wasn't bad. I just didn't like it. But what changed for me was when I got into the college co-op program.